Taf Beis Amud Beis, right at the top of the Amud. Continuing on with the discussion of the Makor, how do we know that there is a Prisha of 7 days before Yom Kippur, that there's a sequestering, a separation of the Kohen Gadol 7 days before Yom Kippur, and also the Kohen of the site of the Parah that burns the Parah Duma, there's a separation. So we learned that from the parasha of the pasuk, rather from the Maluim. It says, "Kasher also b'Yomi Masechet Hashem lasos l'chaper aleichem." So we learned out that that's a reference to Yom Kippur. That just like by the Maluim, there was a separation, a sequestering for 7 days before the 8th day of the Maluim, before the sons of Aaron did the Avodah. So too, for the future, Yom Kippur, there is a sequestering of 7 days before the Avodah Yom Kippur. And we learned out that there is Xera Shava, that we learned out Tziva. It says Kasher Tziva Sam Lasais, and it says by Paraduma, Zayis Chukas Atera Asher Tziva Hashem Lemar. So, therefore, just like we learned out over there that there is a Para and there is a Prisha, then so too by Paraduma, then there is also a Prisha before the Paraduma. Now, Gemara has a question. Track the Gemara that no, maybe not. Ve'ema tziva the Yom Kippur. How do you know to make the Xera Shava between the Meluim and Paraduma? Maybe it's to teach you Yom Kippur. Maybe it's the Yom Kippurim. D'chsiv vayaz kasher tziva Hashem es Moshe, because there's also a tziva by Yom Kippur, because it says that Moshe Rabbeinu did, that Aaron did rather, as Hashem commanded Moshe Rabbeinu. And Aaron did kasher tziva Hashem es Moshe, so it also says tziva. So maybe the Xera Shava is to teach me Yom Kippur. Frektai says, why would we need Xera Shava to teach me Yom Kippur? Well, we have the pasuk, and we darshan before that Legavi the pasuk we said before that Yom Kippur says Kasher Asa B'Yomi Masechet Tziva Hashem Lasos L'chaper Aleichem. So we have over there the La'asais and L'chaper, and that teaches us Yom Kippur. Why would we think that the Xera Shava would be needed also for Yom Kippur? So Taisa says that one of the approaches in Taisa, he has different approaches, but one of the approaches in Taisa is that perhaps at this point we are saying that the drosh of Lasses is not compelling, and therefore perhaps that we would not darshan the Lasses, and therefore what we would have is that lechaper. Now the pasuk that it says kasher asa b'Yomi Masechet tziva Hashem lasos lechaper aleichem wouldn't necessarily tell me Yom Kippur. Could be that it's referring to other korbanos, and therefore that itself we wouldn't be able to learn out Yom Kippur. Therefore, we would need the addition of the Xera Shava to teach me Dafke Yom Kippur and not other korbanos. So therefore, fact the Gemara, how l'maisa do we know Paraduma? Maybe it's needed for Yom Kippur. The Gemara says, "Danim tziva delifnei asiyah." We are make the Xera Shava in a more precise manner. We darshan the tziva where it's placed before the asiyah. Where it's placed before the Asiyah, mitziva, the lifnei Asiyah. In a similar case where the tziva is written before the Asiyah la'asais. Meaning, by the Maluim it says, kasher asa b'Yomi Masechet tziva, Hashem commands tziva Hashem, la'asais, to perform, which is written afterwards. And similarly, by Paraduma it says, Zayischukas Atera Asher tziva Hashem lemor, Darbo ben Eser v'yichol Paraduma, Timashein b'mum, so it also says tziva, and it says that they should do ve'ikolecha, and it says that they should do the following. Masha'enkin by Yom Kippur, it doesn't say it that way. It says by Yom Kippur that Aaron did. It says that Aaron did kasher tziva Hashem es Moshe. So the doing, the performing, is before the tziva, not after. So therefore, it's in a more precise way we will learn at Paraduma. Frank the Gemara, ve'ema tziva de korbanos. Well, maybe it means tziva of a korbanos. Rashi says a korban tzibor, that you would need a prisha, you would need hafrasha. It also says b'Yomi Tzavaisa, it says tziva. And tziva and savaisa, we're saying, is similar enough to make the gzera shava. The Gemara says no. Danen tziva mitziva vein danem tzavaisa mitziva. No, it's not precisely the same. It's the same connotation, but it's not exactly the same word. Or umay nafkamina. What difference does it make? We see that Gzera Shava doesn't have to be precise. We see it from the following. It says, it says the Kain is Shavi returns to the house and he comes to the house. So this is referring to the case where there's a nega, there's a taras in the house. So when it says when he comes to the house and he sees that there is a nega, there's a leprosy, so he scrapes around the stone, he removes the afflicted stones, he scrapes around it and he waits a week and comes back to see its return. So then, and it says, now when he says he returns to the house, then he doesn't say that he does the same procedure, but we learn out a Gzera Shava that he again repeats the same procedure. Now here we're making Gzera Shava even though they're different words. So you're telling me that there's a difference between Tziva and Savoisa, where it's the same word but it's not exactly the same? Where it says, Hanimili, where do we make the Gzera Shava even though the words aren't the same? Hanimili, where there's no alternative that's precise. But where we have an alternative which is more precise, so we have the choice to choose something which is precise or not, we choose the one that is precise, not the one that isn't. So therefore, we will learn out tziva and not savaisa. And therefore, it does not refer to Yom Kippur. So therefore, we learn out this Gzera Shava to teach me Paraduma. How do we know Yom Kippur? Because of the Lachaper that it says in the Pasuk. It said Lachaper, Ela Maisa Kippurim, Lachaper reference to Yom Kippurim, Ve'ema Kapara de Karbonos. Maybe it means Kapara of Karbonos. Maybe it doesn't refer to the Yom Kippur, so maybe it means the kapara of Karbonos. There seems to be a steer in Rashi over here, because here Rashi says Kapara de Karbonos, and here he says a korban that a person comes to bring for his personal avera, where he needs a kapara. So previously, when we said that maybe it means that tziva means tziva of karbonos, there Rashi says a korban sibur. Here he says that it means for a person who brings a kapara for his averas. But perhaps the chiluk is over here because before we were dashing from Gzera Shava, and over there it says tziva. The question was tziva karbonos, and it says b'yom tzavoy says b'nei Yisrael. And it says by karbonos, it says that b'yom tzavosoi as b'nei Yisrael, that he was mitzvah them for other korbanos. Now that's referring to that sivu of other korbanos as a korban sibur. Here we want to learn it out. We're attempting to say that the word lechaper, maybe that refers to korbanos. Well, if it's lechaper, it has to be korbanos that the reference is that are coming for a kapara. So maybe it would mean to refer to korbanos of where there's an avera, he needs a kapara. Gemara says, Mi adin and hey kain misrami. Do we know which kain will be do the avodah de boile prisha? That you're going to say that this kain has to be separated, has to be sequestered. We don't know which kain is going to be doing the avodah. If you're telling me that it's Yom Kippur, it's a kain gadol. But a private korban, who knows which kain is going to do the avodah? So Amra, they said, Alalai, why not? Well, let's say that you need to do a prisha for the entire Beisav. That when you have a mishmer, the mishmer is divided into each day of the week a separate Beisav. We should say that and that Beisav, the Kohen, we're going to do the avodah, that entire Beisav would need a separation for 7 days before they do the avodah. So therefore you would ensure that whoever does the korban of a kapara will have prisha. One answers, done in davar shekavu loizman, davar shekavu loizman. We darshan one from the other, which has a fixed time. Yom Kippur has a fixed date, and we daven something else. We daven davar shekavu loizman. So from something which has a Zman Kavua, the Yom Shmini Lamiluim had a fixed time. So there we darshan one from the other. Lafuke Korbanas, the whole Yom is no. So that's Lafuke Korbanas that come at any time. They don't come at a fixed time. Frank the Gemara, Ve'ema Regolium. Well, maybe I should say that it's the Korbanas of Regolium, that it's a regal. Now the regal has a fixed time. So maybe it's the Korban of the regal. So the way we were learning before, but it says lachaper, so it has to be a korban that comes lachaper. But we do have by the regolim, it's a soyer that there's a soyer lachatas. It's machaper and tumas mikdash v'kadosha. So maybe it's the regolim. The Gemara answers done and davar shenoi pamachs b'shana, medavar shenoi pamachs b'shana. We darshan something that comes only once a year. Something comes once a year, meaning the miluim came at one time. And Yom Kippur comes one time a year, Lafuki Regolim, which excludes the Regolim. The La Pamachs B'Shana Ninu. It doesn't come only at one time. It comes 3 times a year. Ve'ema Regel Echad. Maybe you'll say it's one of the Regolim. It's one of the Regolim, which only comes one time a year. Well, perhaps you'll say, but how do I know which one? So, Icha, you could say, Icha Gamatzah it could be Chagamatzah, Hoyle Apostle Bar Kosav Tchila, since it's the first one the Torah mentioned, it has the Mila of being Rishon, of being first. Icha Gasukkos, or Chagasukkos has a Mila, Hoyle Meruba Mitzvah, it has many mitzvahs, it has a Sukkah, and Al-Minim, and it has Nisuch Hamayim, and Arova, meaning each one has a Mila, and therefore it would be up to Bezdin to decide, as Taisus Rosh says, it would be up to Bezdin to decide which one it is, but it would be determined Minasora, but it would only be one of them. So, therefore, still, how do I know conclusively that it's Yom Kippur? El, the Gemara says, Donim Precious Shiva Elohim Echad, we darshan a separation of 7 for an avoid of 1 day. From a case where it's a separation of 7 days for an avoid of 1 day. So now Yom Kippur, you can separate prior to it, and it's a avoid of 1 day. 1 day, Yom Kippur is 1 day. We will learn that out from the Miluim. There's 7 days of the Miluim, and then there's a Shmini Miluim. There's a separation of 7 days for an avoid on the 8th day. So that's what we will learn out. But to say a 7-day separation either for Pesach or Sukkot, you'd be separating 7 days for something where the Avodah is for 7 days. We would not learn that out. So therefore, from a case where the Prisha is 7 for 1 day. Well, maybe it's Shmini Atzeres, and Shmini Atzeres is only a 1-day yontif, and therefore it would be similar. So maybe it's referring to Shmini Atzeres. So Shmini the Prisha Shiva Yom Echadu, because that's also it's a Prisha for a 1-day avodah. Gemara says no. Done and Dover Shein Kedusha Lafana. We darshan Yom Kippur, which is the days prior to it, doesn't have Kedusha. So the days before Yom Kippur doesn't have Kedusha. There's 7 days separation for that 1 day. From the Maluim, the 7 days of Maluim, also the 7 days where there's a Prisha of 7 for something that does not have Kedusha in front of it. So we darshan that over there, there's no kedusha on the days before the Shmini L'Miluim. Ve'ein don davar sheyesh kedusha l'fanam, davar she'en kedusha l'fanam. But we don't darshan from the Miluim to Shmini Atzeres, where the days prior to Shmini Atzeres are Yom Tov and has kedusha l'fanam. More of a lav kal v'chaymer, isn't a kal v'chaymer? Asha davar she'en kedusha l'fanam by prisha. If you're telling me that days beforehand, which don't have kedusha, nevertheless you need prisha, you need a separation. Davar sheyesh kedusha l'fanam, something which is chomor, which it has kedusha in front of it. Look, kol shekain, certainly it should need prisha, it should need sequestering. Amar Roshar, she says, no. It says hazeksiv. It says that he did hazeh, like he did on this day, which we darshan this kaza like this. So when we learn out the Prisha, that it has to be something which is exactly like this. So therefore, even though it's true you have a svara, but we darshan from the pasuk that it has to be like It has to be like that this day of the Miluim. The pasuk says, "Kasher also b'yom hazeh tziva shel mascha b'leichem." It has to be kazeh, where there's no kedusha in front of it. So therefore, we can't learn out to the case of Shmini Atzeres. So Rav Ashi Omar, he says another reason why it can't be Shmini Atzeres. Mi ikamidi de ikaregaloi boy prisha. You're telling me that Sukkot doesn't need prisha. How there's something where the Iker Yontav doesn't need prisha and Tafel Day boy prisha, and something which is subordinate, something which is Tafel to the that does. You're telling me that Sukkot doesn't need prisha, and you're going to tell me that Shmini Atzeres does need prisha? Now, afilu domer Shmini regal b'fnei atzma hani milin b'sar kishav. Now, even if you say that Shmini Atzeres is an independent regal, that is for certain specific items, as we'll see in the next year. But essentially, a Shmini Atzeres is not totally independent. It's subordinate. It's tafel to Sukkot. Yes, it's considered a regal b'fnei atzmai, but that's only as far as certain specific items are concerned, which we'll see. But nevertheless, it's considered subordinate. Be'ikr in general, it's considered subordinate to Sukkot. How can you say that Sukkot doesn't need prisha and Shmini Atzeres does?